Okay, so I think I'll get started since the time is limited. As I mentioned, if some of you attended the session that was this afternoon, just early afternoon, we have a very large program for helping same-sex men and single men having children, and we've developed it over the last 15 years or so, and we've published articles on it and so on. And I'm a board certified REI. I trained in my OB-GYN training, obstetrics and gynecology in Toronto, and then I did UCSF training in California, and I won't tell you how many years ago that was, but suffice to say I've been doing this for about 25 years. So I'm very, very experienced. All of our doctors in our clinic have fellowships and certification. One is an American certified ABOG, and one is a Canadian, and the other one did a fellowship before the certification was available in the States as well. So everybody in our clinic is a board certified or a fellowship trained REI, and so that's a really important thing when you want to find a doctor who does this to help you guys, because it really involves a very, very specialized type of care, and you want to find someone you feel is qualified to do that. And then we also have several other doctors that satellite with us, so we're quite a large clinic, and we do over 1,500 cycles a year right now, and growing every year. We've done many, many international surrogacy egg donation programs like this, and from every country around the world, and been very, very successful, and things have gone extremely well, and we've really, touch wood, never had really any major problems, so it's good. When a patient comes to us, a couple comes to us, or a single man comes to us that would like to have children, we basically I do a consultation with them, and if they are far away, I'll do it by Skype or telephone if that's the only way to do it that's practical. But if they're close enough that they can actually come here and attend to our clinic in Toronto and have a tour, it's really nice, because you want to see kind of where everything's going to happen, and if you're able to do that, especially if you don't live too far away, it's really a nice thing. We don't charge anything for the consultation. It's a free session that we spend at least an hour or more with the people to really go through everything in great detail, so that you're extremely well informed and that you can make a very informed decision about whether to go with us, because we really feel that we do great work, but you obviously have to be convinced of that and feel comfortable with that. And we have a lot of flexibility in our program as well. So when I see a couple, I'll talk to them about their medical history. Obviously, we'll want to know if both people, if it's a couple, will be providing sperm at the initial stages, because sometimes they'll want a baby with each of them, or sometimes it'll be with one. And obviously, we've also had cases where someone's sister donated eggs and the other partner had their sperm, so it was kind of a neat situation. So we've had all combinations of permutations you can imagine. And then we go through, in terms of screening the men, we do a history examination, sperm, blood testing, and basically the full gamut of testing. We have one of the most advanced, Sergey, who's in the back there, and he has two lovely girls with his partner. I don't know, I can show a picture today, you can see. He is our head of our andrology program, and he's an excellent, one of the best in all of North America as an andrologist, and he really can look at sperm and see if there whatever problems there are, we can deal with it. So usually we can help almost any person to have children in terms of the male side of things. And then we talk about the egg donation. So we have a number of egg donor programs that we work, agencies that we work with in concert. Two of them are in Canada, and the other three that we work with a lot are in the US, and there are several other ones depending on ethnicity. For example, we'll have certain ones for Asian and South Asian and so on and so forth. So the agencies in Canada, of course, the donors will be a lot less expensive because Canadian dollars and they're local. A couple of our US agencies have Canadian donors as well as part of their program. That'll be less expensive, but you're still paying the agency in US dollars. They're going to pay more money ultimately. But ultimately, you want to find the best donor for you and someone you really like. So if it costs a little bit more, maybe you'll be okay with that. And then once you've chosen a donor, and most of the donors are anonymous, but many of them are open to contact after 18 once the child's legal age and there's no legal support responsibilities that she would ever have to consider. And in those cases, we don't, when it's an anonymous donor, even if she's open to contact after 18, we don't require a legal contract. And there are pros and cons of whether a legal contract helps or not with an anonymous donor. Like I always say, we don't do anonymous sperm donor contracts, so we don't require egg donor contracts, but we do require it for surrogacy, as you all know. There are pros and cons. I think you can look at either side of it. In terms of the egg donor, we try to do a full screening of her, medical, all the blood testing, genetic testing, and so on, and ultrasounds. So we really try to screen our donors in a very, very strict way. There's certain things that we don't recommend in terms of genetics. Obviously, if they have genetic disease in their family, we look for things that run in their family, like obviously mental illness or substance abuse issues. So those are the kinds of things that we obviously wouldn't normally recommend a donor. Ultimately, it's up to you. If someone's grandfather had depression, that would be the great-grandfather biologically of the child, so that's pretty far removed, and that probably doesn't have any impact on that child. But if you had depression in your family, then the combination, you may want to look at that as another way of looking at it. So ultimately, it's your decision, but we basically look at donors and see if we recommend them or we don't recommend them in terms of their profile, and ultimately it's your decision. In terms of surrogates, we screen them very strictly in terms of medical, physical examinations, ultrasounds, blood testing, and we also screen her partner, if she has one, to make sure he doesn't have any diseases, viral illnesses that may affect your baby, HIV, hepatitis, and so on, because that's really important. They're sharing bodily fluids through the pregnancy, and so we want to make sure that he, or if it's a same-sex female couple, then her, don't have anything that's going to affect your baby during the pregnancy. So, and we see them all in person, and we do a full examination as much as possible. And I think that's really sort of, and I think most of you probably know all this, and it's pretty standard, but we try to do things as quickly as possible. One person asked in the last session, how quickly can you get a surrogate for us? Well, believe it or not, there are way more surrogates than there are recipients in Canada. So the market is really good. So if I send an email to one of the agents we use called CFC, they're based in Ontario and BC, probably in about 10 minutes you'd have 5 profiles in your inbox. So it's really quick. Most of our non-Canadian patients will want to look at surrogates in, the reason for surrogates in BC or Alberta, because in BC and Alberta, the baby is also covered under the medical system for free. Whereas in all the other provinces, the mother, the surrogate, is covered completely. There's no cost whatsoever. No matter what complication occurs during that pregnancy, there's absolutely no cost. In Ontario and other provinces outside of BC and Alberta, we can get insurance, but only if you do single embryo transfer, and they won't insure if there's a double embryo transfer. It's about $3,500 to $4,000 US dollars to do that insurance, which is a good deal, actually. The reimbursement, so let me talk about cost, because everybody wants to know that, obviously. So for egg donation, there are a number of different costs. There are the drugs, the medical, and the expenses and agency fees. Altogether, if you add everything up, it's about 20,000 Canadian dollars, or around 15,000 US dollars. So it's quite inexpensive compared to what you'd be paying down here. And then if you do a legal contract, if you wish to do that, it's another couple of $1,000s extra on top of that. You'll talk about that. In terms of the surrogate, the costs here are the legal contract, which is usually about $3,000 to $5,000 for the 2 lawyers, and actually probably closer to $3,000 in US dollars. And then you've got the agency itself, who takes a fee of about $5,000 US dollars, a little bit less than 5,000. And then there's the medical fees, which are about, altogether, there's about 3,000, 4 to 5. So it ends up being about 4,000 for the first cycle that they do. and then it's only about 950 Canadian dollars, about 700 for the next cycle. So it's quite a bit less expensive on the next cycle. And also the other fee, of course, is the expense reimbursement. Works out to be about $2,000 a month in the contracts that I've seen, which is about that's Canadian dollars, $1,500 US dollars. Sorry, I'm converting a lot here, but we think about it obviously in our own currency, but it's about $1,500 a month. There are things that could be extra during the pregnancy, time off work and twins and other complications that affect her expense reimbursement, but it's limited. It can't be someone says, I want 50,000 US dollars or 60, it doesn't work that way. In Canada, we have to limit it based on the law, which says you can be expense reimbursed, but you can't be just paid whatever you want. Same with our egg donors. So the reimbursement of expenses is limited by the laws in Canada, which makes it better for you guys because it's less expensive.
I could just pop up now. So I think as we said this
Just one more second.
Yeah.
So the total, if you're looking at everything, and that's I think important for you to know. Remember, this morning I was saying it was about half of what it is in the US. So the total works out to be around Canadian dollars 55, 60, so around 45 to 50,000 US dollars for everything.
So just to pick up on the expense part in the law in Canada, the law simply says that you may reimburse donor or surrogate for their expenses. And we define what is reasonable based on experience. So as a 30-year veteran of the criminal courts, I defined reasonable every minute of the day. And so we draft a contract that sets out what we think will be reasonable expenses. And that contract goes to the Department of Vital Statistics when you're applying for the birth registration. And they have government lawyers who review it. And nobody's ever said it's a problem. It also goes to the judge to get the declaration of parentage, and nobody's ever said it's a problem. So we have a very good reason to believe that our contracts are solid. And so what happens in the legal process is once the donor and the surrogate are screened and we get the green light from the medical clinic, we begin the contract. And the egg donor contract is about 10 pages, your surrogacy contract is about 35 pages. And it outlines all of the rights and obligations of the parties. In Canada, a woman has the right to control her body. So you cannot force her to give you those eggs at the end of the day. You can't force her to carry a baby for you, and nor can you force her to keep the baby she is carrying when you want her to abort it. She can abort up to a medically safe period of about 20 weeks. So how do you avoid that happening when it is your baby? Generally by having an amazing relationship with her and choosing the profile with a good agency like CFC, Canadian Fertility Consultants, and their sister group, Egg Helpers. And so when you're choosing the surrogate, you'll make sure that her profile is such that she has no problem reducing or aborting at your wish. And we put all of that in the contract. We set out what the expenses are. We also set out, of course, that it will be your baby. Your eggs, your embryos, your babies. You get a legal declaration from whatever province the child is born in saying you are the only parents, and to maintain confidentiality, the court will seal files, order that the registration also be sealed, and the court also orders that the surrogate and her partner, if there is one, are not the parents. You fill out the paperwork. The questionnaire says, how many weeks pregnant were you? You answer as if you gave birth. It's really quite amazing. You will be the only ones on the birth certificate. It is not amended. And we work with your lawyer back home. You will either tell us if you have one or we will find you one depending on where you live to make sure before we start the process we are doing what you need to have done for when you bring baby home. You bring the baby home with a Canadian passport. It is a citizen of our great country, which may help you in the future if there's a war.
Donald Trump becomes president.
Your child will be a dual citizen.
Yeah.
Dual citizen?
Yeah, once you obtain your citizenship
Just
here.
comes back.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Pretty good. And, and always welcome home.
So I hear the success rate that you're giving out and so forth. It just sounds like there is risk there, and that the provinces of BC and such could change. Is that Would it have to go to a vote, or how, could that be changed
No.
overnight?
No, the provincial medical plans are run by the provinces, but in a separate way. So when they changed it in Ontario and stopped paying for foreign babies, it did not require a legislative change, and it wouldn't in Alberta or BC either. So it could happen, but it happens with notice, so you wouldn't get it in the middle of your
Is it
pregnancy.
grandfathered in?
So, well, there will be the insurance. And the cost saving, given the dollar and the cost saving in overall fees for everybody, will more than pay for the insurance policy. So, but that is single embryo transfer. So,
Most, most babies, especially singletons, are going to be healthy and they're going to require very little care, as you probably know. So the amount, and it's in Alberta and BC, it's completely free for the baby. And the mother, that's not going to change because
yeah, she'll
anyone
always be covered.
who's a citizen of Canada who has health insurance is free. There's never going to be a change in that. So that's the law of Canada.
So then when the dual citizenship piece, with the health system in Canada, things post-birth, how does that work with insurance? It just becomes, basically, we live in Florida, so we're US citizens, the baby will come back with us, and then...
You'll apply for your registration and citizenship here, in Florida, wherever, in the US, and your baby has dual citizenship, and the benefits of that as it grows up. If it moves to Canada, eventually, the US government will tax it. But if you go to war, it can come up safely.
What's
Go
your
to more
success?
universities,
Yeah.
pardon?
What's your success rate?
Okay, so.
But that mine is always good. Nobody fails at the contract.
So we just did an analysis specifically for same-sex male with egg donor and surrogate. And in our last 2 years, we had for the first try, I mean, obviously you have to look at, what's the cumulative success versus one try. And our first try was 67.8%, almost 70%, which I think is among the best in the world. And then our cumulative rate was 87.3 or something like that percent. I have it on a slide somewhere, but somewhere just under 90% cumulatively, that most of the people, by far the majority of people who went into a program were successful. And obviously there are going to be some that have to go with a new egg donor, or more rarely another surrogate.
How long have you been around?
I've been doing this for 25 years, and we've been doing egg donor surrogacy for probably about 20 of those years.
20 years.
Hard to believe how
I just
young you look.
published, you can look at my name on Google it if you want. You can see the largest series of surrogacy in the world was reported by our clinic.
Actually, those memory sticks would have
It's on our memory sticks, you can look at
memory
here.
sticks would have
There you go.
those,
The number on that study, which is now about, a study that comes out a couple of years ago, is based on data that's even more older than that. We have double what those numbers are right now. And the same thing is we published the largest series of same-sex men and single men as well. And that's also a different publication that was earlier. But we have 3 times as many of those cases now that we published them.
You got our survey program.
Now the other reason that our statistics are so good is because we do some additional things in choosing embryos. The first one is called the EmbryoScope. I don't know if anyone's heard of that, but it's a time lapse. It's an amazing technology developed in Denmark. And so we have these incubators where, a normal incubator, you have to take it out of the incubator, look under the microscope, make some observation, stick it back in. You're doing that 5 days in a row. And every time you take that embryo out of the incubator, it changes the temperature, the pH, and although the embryos are really good at doing it, they can do it pretty quickly, they still have to do that every day. And you're only getting that one moment in time. With the time-lapse system, it never comes out of the incubator for the entire 5 days. It takes a picture every 20 minutes. You can actually get this time-lapse movie, if you want, of your baby at that stage of its development. And we measure up to 10 parameters on that embryo as it develops through that entire process over that movie. And so one example is the embryo should normally go 1 cell, 2 cells, 4 cells, 8 cells. If an embryo goes directly from 1 cell to 3 cells, that's probably not a good sign. That embryo is probably not as likely to make a baby. If that happens at 4 in the morning, nobody's there to see it. So we would never see that in a normal incubator when we have to take it out just that one moment. So that is 850 Canadian dollars, about $650 US extra to do that. It's not a lot of money, but it's something that we actually find that increases our success, especially if we're choosing a single or double embryo. So we have more twins when we put 2 of those embryos that we chose that way, and more single pregnancies on the first try. The second thing that we have that's unique, not many clinics in the world have this, is that we have PGS, or pre-implantation genetic screening, available in our clinic, right in our own laboratory. So we do a biopsy. For PGS, you have to do a biopsy of the embryo, take 3 or 4 cells out of about 60 to 80 at the 5 to 6 day stage, and you have to freeze those embryos, and the technology now for freezing it, you may know, is so good with vitrification that there's almost no difference between fresh and frozen embryos. And so we then test them, we find out the result, and then we put back only normal embryos. Now, you might say, well, they're young donors, why would you do that? Well, we found, and it was interesting, because when we used to often when we put 2 embryos in, we'd get 1 baby. About 70% of the time, 1 baby came out, right? So we said, well, why is that? Well, maybe because one of the embryos wasn't normal. And when we do the test, we actually find that 70% of the embryos are normal, but 30% are abnormal. So there are definitely abnormal eggs in a young donor. And so by putting in just normal embryos, not only are you increasing the chance it's going to work on the first try, right? Because you can't tell looking at an embryo if it's normal or not. A Down syndrome embryo looks beautiful under the microscope, you can't tell. So this technology allows that. It's an extra cost to do it. It's in US dollars about $3,000, whereas if you tried to do that here in the States, it's about twice that, I would guess at least. That's for up to 8 embryos, and then if you have more than 8, you're lucky enough to have that many to test, it's $200 extra for each embryo. That's about that. So it's really, it's probably a good investment, because especially if your surrogate has to travel or come to the clinic again and has to go through another transfer, there's other costs. So if you invest in getting the best embryos right from the start, I think your chance, and the chance of twins from 30%, if we put in 2, goes up to about almost 50%. So we don't as REIs, we try to get 1 healthy baby at a time, but I know a lot of people in this situation would love to have twins with each of them, and like our Dr. Moskov said at the back there, Sergey, he can show you his picture, so we can do that. Surrogates in Canada, we don't allow, in our clinic anyway, usually putting any more than 1 or 2 embryos in the surrogate, as we obviously have to think of her safety as well. So that's a long answer to a short question, sorry. Yes?
I'm still sort of getting my head around the different roles that different organizations play.
Yes.
But it sounds like, so you guys are 2 separate agencies, but...
Well, she's a lawyer, right? And so
right.
she does a lot of the legal contracts for us.
Okay.
And there are agencies that we work with that provide that are not medical, they provide the surrogates and the egg donors, those profiles. So you're basically paying us for the medical part, her for the legal, and them for the
And the agency coordinates it all.
And
No,
what's the
actually,
agency?
The agency doesn't coordinate. The agency helps you find the donor and surrogate, and we coordinate it all they coordinate some of the legal stuff, I should say. But in terms of medical, we coordinate. We have 7 nurses just dedicated to this program. I think 7 or 8 now.
We're the largest clinic in Canada. There's 120 employees in our clinic, and it's not only surrogacy only. There's many different.
So when you have a nurse, she's going to be your dedicated nurse. She's the one you communicate with. Petra's not here. She's one of our 7 nurses that works in our program, and that will be your liaison person, the person you communicate with. If it's Petra, that's the person you talk to whenever you have a problem, if there's any issues, you want questions, whatever it is. And if I need to get involved, she comes right to me, and she does no hesitation coming to you if she has a question, and we get it all dealt with very quickly. Email, calling, as much as you need to call. So it's really we have it very, very organized. We have 2 actually admin people that are just dedicated to this program. They don't do regular IVF and all the other parts of the process.
And the agency, CFC, has the number of staff members dedicated to different roles. So for example, they have 1 member who will contact your surrogate virtually on a weekly, if not more, basis, checking in on her, making sure her needs are met. If they sense that she's having a hard time, they'll go visit her, and we even put that in the legal contracts. so that you will know if she needs extra support or help. They also have people dedicated to helping the intended parents, making sure that you have someone to speak with as well. And of course, I do that naturally, having been there. So that everybody has a really important role in making sure you have an amazing journey and you get to be happy.
Yeah, I mean, some clinics, they help you have pregnancy and they go, okay, see you later.
Yeah.
That's not us. We follow all of our surrogacy pregnancy up till the end of the first trimester. If they're local, then we get them a very good obstetrician or midwife. If they're outside of Ontario, then we get them someone in the local area.
So you guys are based in Ontario, obviously.
Yes.
You're in Toronto.
Right.
But then you, surrogate.
They come to our clinic. Because we're doing all the IVF here.
Okay.
They come here, they do their transfer, and then they go home.
You say here you're talking.
If they're far away. Don't take
Toronto.
The same city of Vancouver, BC?
Yeah, and the agency will help coordinate getting the surrogate
And
there.
then for us, because we're in Florida, we would just travel to Toronto for.
Wherever,
Wherever you go.
for the deposit, for the transfer if you want, for visits whenever, and certainly for the birth where that will be.
The big questions I have just right now are so could be myths, you know, I have lots of Canadian friends, and I love the Canadian connection. I just love Canadians, but the health system itself, you know, where the surrogate mother has, the surrogate donor has the ability to be taken care of by the government.
Yes, she has full health.
So how is that compared to the US health system? I mean, like in general, is it the quality of care?
Well, I can tell you that if you've met any Canadian doctors that come out of the States, they're usually the top doctors that are here. I trained in Canada and I came out of the States and I was like, I saw some of the best doctors and some of the worst. So I think the medical system here has its problems as well. I think in general, the quality of our training and everything is among the top in the world.
And
I
I
mean,
should
the only
also
thing
say,
you'll hear is waiting for services.
Yeah, waiting.
There's no question that for some things, you'll wait. If you're going there you stubbed your toe or something, you'll probably wait long. Okay, you're not going to be seen immediately. You have a ruptured appendix or a heart attack, immediate.
and a pregnancy complication,
And a pregnancy.
good care,
Yeah.
fast, good and fast. And the other thing is, I've talked to a number of obstetricians, so when the surrogate is transferred after 12 weeks, who tell me with foreign clients, they do Skype calls for the checkups, or a phone call so you can hear the Doppler and hear the heartbeat at each appointment. And my husband Chris couldn't come to every appointment that I went to, so I had him on the cell phone and he could hear the heartbeat. And they do it by Skype now with foreign clients all the time, so you can be there. Which is nice.
So, I have a question. The range of fees you were breaking down before, does that also include the surrogacy agency fees or not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
So then what's the catch? Right, you have a good success rate.
catch is that we have a bad-
January.
We earn money in Canadian dollars,
I
right?
have
So
to
we're,
avoid that.
our dollar is really bad. And
Right, but we're
so
talking half
you
now.
guys are lucky to have the.
You know, there's,
It's amazing, huh?
But the catch though is truly
The medical
the
care.
art that you have to go through in ensuring that we understand our obligation, and she
Yeah.
understands her obligation,
Oh, yeah.
and what the two governments have agreed to. That's
So,
really the trick.
If I keep track of every minute I spend on a file with a software program, and the surrogacy contract will often be 20 hours. And you get a detailed bill. And the surrogate, if I represent a surrogate, which I do, I have an hour call with her, I review the contract for about 2 hours with her and her husband, if there is one. And then there's the back and forth amendments, making sure they understand. And I often insert mistakes to catch you, if you're reading. It's something I've always done as a criminal lawyer. And he'll tell you that I make sure he reads his affidavit that he has to sign.
So you want some red
Yeah,
lights?
I mean, I was a criminal lawyer for 30 years. And I know what it means to speak and do, thinking about what's in the media tomorrow. I don't make those mistakes. So we make very sure, and we often ensure that we're picking lawyers that we know will do the good job, because I don't want one of my clients to have that problem. I don't want to be in the media that way, and I never have been.
What happens if, so we can talk later, but that's fine.
Yeah,
I'd love to take it
certainly.
offline. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I mean, people will accuse me
I
of
can
being
appreciate
too
that.
anal and too much of a perfectionist when I
Well, we
say
really
that.
have two countries that have, you know, two legal systems in place.
Mhm.
And the way they perceive the woman's body and so forth, the contracts, you know, are different. So
Yes,
it's
that
just
depends,
more
yes.
to do due diligence correctly, so we can ensure that we can, you know, all parties are
Absolutely.
hopefully not, you know,
I always
willing to,
consult
and
with
willing to
a
agree.
lawyer in the native land or state. Always, all over the world.
That's great, that's fantastic.
I'll even come to Florida in the winter to
Absolutely.
help. Small fee.
Everyone else does. Come on down.
The real downside is visiting us in January, I have to tell you. The summer's lovely.
Actually, Toronto's beautiful.
Yeah. And
And we
as
have
I
hockey.
said, come up to Toronto, do a consultation with
Yeah.
me or one of the fellows, and we'll get a chance to see your clinic. Happy to show you around and show you. We're very transparent. We really want to make sure you guys understand everything, and there's no, we're not, we'll tell you like it is. I know the costs are lower than you expected, but that's it's.
I've often thought.
For us, it's a lot of
in the
money.
US, it would be great.
Thank you.
Good luck.